Welcome everybody to another YouTube video. How much of you people know about this purple dragon right here? His name is Figment. But how much do you know about this character? Or have you even heard of him? Because most of these people don't exactly know who Figment is, and they also mispronounce him for a different character like Dragon Tales or Spyro. Today I am here to talk to you guys about who this lovable and adorable purple figment of your imagination dragon is on today's video with me, Spark of Imagination. Let's go. So what I have here in my hand is a Figment popcorn bucket, one of the very first editions of the Figment popcorn bucket, the one that gained worldwide news from all over the internet and all over the world. But Figment is a very popular character in EPCOT, not as popular compared to other characters like Goofy, Donald Duck, Mickey Mouse, but I mean, he surely is one of the most popular Disney characters of all time. And of course, he has a massive fan base of people from around the globe who honestly know a lot about this character, like myself. I've been a Figment fan for 4 years, and I'm still continuing that kind of obsession because, well, I mean, I technically have a massive Figment collection, as, you know, some people already know, some people don't know, and now you guys probably will know because I just showed you guys some pictures about it. But as you all know, Figment is a very loved and passionate character with a very lovable fan base. Now, Figment has been around since 1983. He's been around for 42 years, and that is one of the major milestones for such Disney character that's been around for at least over a decade. And not many people know exactly who the character is. They don't know who Figment is or anything like that. They see Figment as kind of like a rip-off version of Spyro, and in which they are absolutely wrong. Because Spyro is basically a different kind of character who came from a different company, also would be known from Insomniac Games, who would be originally debuted for a video game on the PlayStation consoles, like the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 2. They also got sponsorship for Nintendo games, like the Nintendo Wii, the Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo DSi, Nintendo DS, you know, Lite, all those kinds of consoles. This is a different character on the other hand. However, he does have some sort of appearance on a few things, such as basically Disney Speedstorm, maybe sooner or later Disney Dreamlight Valley. He also appears in Disney Magic Kingdoms, and a few other games that I probably don't remember from the top of my head because I just don't remember it at the moment. But as you all know, this is the unofficial mascot of EPCOT, and he is one of the major characters in the town of EPCOT. Town of EPCOT or city of EPCOT, whatever works. Now, let's talk about the history about Figment. So, Figment has come from a very long process of changes and changes and changes. What some may not know is that Figment actually came from an originality piece of when before California Adventure became a thing. The part of California Adventure was no longer a thing at the time of Figment's original creation. Actually, as a matter of fact, the original creation that was supposed to be California Adventure, which it currently is standing as California Adventure right now, the original creation of what was supposed to be right across from Disneyland was basically supposed to be an entire different version of EPCOT, and in which they would call it WestCOT. Now, WestCOT had a lot of lands, and it had a lot of different themes. Now, one that I do want to point out is called Discovery Bay. Now, mind you that this is behind a few of the Imagineers, including the world-famous Tony Baxter. Now, Tony Baxter was asked to design a few rides, and he was also designed to create these amazing masterpieces of artwork that would be concepts for this kind of land. Now, WestCOT was basically supposed to be, as you would expect, the secondary version of EPCOT, but it's just on the West Coast, which is basically California, the state of California in the United States. Now, WestCOT is no longer a thing. It's been gone since, you know, the early 1990s. And one of the major reasons why WestCOT never happened was because, well, the city had problems with it. Not only was it too much of a loud noise, but don't forget too that Westcott was going to also bankrupt Disney, because at the time Disney wasn't as much of a huge company and comes to money likewise. Now of course there were a lot of plans that are happening within that specific spot of the Walt Disney Company, but at that time being, Walt Disney Company wasn't actually doing very well in profit. And besides the fact that the company itself was still in development with EPCOT, and in which that was costing them millions and billions of dollars. So they would kind of think that maybe Westcott wasn't exactly much of the best ideas, but they still managed to put to a few things to good use, and one of them would happen to be with this character named Figment. Now, Figment was a original character based off of a green dragon. Now, let me go on ahead and step ahead for a second. So, the original Figment, he was supposed to be green. In the early development phases, he actually did have a green skin color or green dragon scales. And of course, the original designs of Figment wasn't exactly perfect. Although, it of course is still the dragon that we know and love today, it wasn't exactly the dragon that you expect to see, especially in, early concepts and stuff like that. Now, Figment was of course green, and of course seeing green version of Figment is definitely rare, especially in original art pieces of who Figment was supposed to be. Now, mind you, the green technically came from the original sponsor before Kodak jumped in, which was called Fujifilm. Now, at the time, Fujifilm and Kodak were massive rivals towards each other, and they were both camera building companies, but Kodak wanted to fight for Figment and for the sponsorship for Journey into Imagination, which would be sooner or later being debuted at EPCOT Center during the 1980s. Now, Figment was basically a one-of-a-kind species and a one-of-a-kind dragon. Now, although we do have, Maleficent as the dragon, we also have Mushu, who also is a dragon as well, and a few other characters that you probably know, like the dragon from Retuculent Dragon, which is a very short Disney short film, which is basically, that blue dragon that you usually see, very big, kind of like Pete's dragon, Elliot. That's also one of the dragons that I would also like to point out in those that are, in the Disney history guideline and, all that kind of stuff. Now, Figment is, basically a dragon as well, so he basically fits in. Now, the only difference is that the dragon is imaginary. It's kind of like the same thing with Elliot, but Figment is kind of more of like his own species, I suppose. Now, Figment wouldn't get his color purple not long after he basically was supposed to be green, but because of the fact that Kodak had jumped in and Tony Baxter wanted to change his color a little bit more, that's technically where Figment got his purple lavender color. Now, when Kodak was in the sponsorship with the Journey into Imagination attraction, which debuted at Epcot Center in 1983, the sweater that he wears, the famous yellow and red sweater that he wears, is basically the representation of the Kodak logo. Now, of course, Kodak is no longer a company because it went bankrupt later, in the future. And, he still wears his red and yellow sweater as technically a remembrance of where he originally got his sponsorship from, which was, as I will say again, Kodak. Now, Figment was really much of a small character when he first debuted. Now, sure, his ride was already becoming a massive success when it opened at Epcot Center, and I can still remember it to this day, because even though I wasn't there, I still remember when they debuted Journey into Imagination for its grand opening. They had multiple ceremonies, they had a lot of events happening for the grand opening of Journey into Imagination, and of course, as you would expect, crowds would definitely be hovering Dreamfinder and Figment as they would be walking up upon that stage and greeting guests and welcoming themselves into Epcot Center alongside with Mickey Mouse and his friends.
Everything that's new, one little spark lights up for you. Oh, hello there. So glad you're here. I am the Dreamfinder. Now, you probably don't recognize me, but I'm the spirit of creativity, the joy of innovation, the thrill of inspiration, and the collector of the sparks of imagination. You see, Figment, every new idea can lead to even more.
Gosh, Dreamfinder, where does it end?
That's the beautiful part, Figment. It never does. Imagination.
course, as you would expect as well, Michael Eisner, the CEO of Disney at the time, and many other of the Disney Imagineers, including Tony Baxter and Steve Kirk. Now, Figment was, as I said, just a very, very small character. And he grew up pretty well, actually, as a matter of fact. And it only took several days until people started falling in love with Figment, especially after these guests happened to meet Dreamfinder and Figment personally during their meet and greets. Because Dreamfinder and Figment would be walking around EPCOT Center, specifically in the Imagination Pavilion, or, somewhere near World Showcase. But he would basically be walking around the Imagination Pavilion. He would be walking outside, he'd be greeting guests, and, kind of just sparking their imagination, because the job of the Dreamfinder was to catch people's imaginations and spark them, like the same thing with Figment, but then it would be collecting those sparks of imagination to put them into the famous Dreamport, and in which technically the Dreamport was like the ImageWorks, which was on the second floor of the Imagination Pavilion, because the attraction was on the first floor, and then on the second floor you technically had the ImageWorks. And the ImageWorks, the original ImageWorks, was definitely one of the best ImageWorks that ever existed. Now, I get it that the current ImageWorks is not the best, and same thing with the attraction, which I'll get into later. But don't forget, too, that this is a massive part of Disney's history. And don't forget, too, that the original Journey into Imagination was one of the most popular rides of all time at a Disney park, and in which people from around the world, including from visiting from like Africa, Japan, Tokyo, South America, Canada, Europe, the UK, England, all that kind of stuff, they would be visiting Journey into Imagination because they noticed that Journey into Imagination was one of the biggest and best ride at EPCOT Center and in any sort of Disney park in general, and in which this is where Figment was starting to gain his massive popularity, same thing with the Dreamfinder. Now, a great thing I do want to point out is that aside from Dreamfinder and Figment being one of the biggest characters of all time because of the opening of Journey to Imagination and it being in existence, basically Journey into Imagination was definitely a one-of-a-kind, especially to those who managed to visit it. Sadly, I was unable to visit the original Journey to Imagination, which is a massive bummer because I would have loved to ride the original attraction and had the experience to see the original Dreamfinder and the original Figment. Now, the original Dreamfinder, as the meet and greet, he would be carrying around a puppet of Figment in his arms, and it was kind of like a magic trick on how he controlled it. You see, the Dreamfinder would have a fake arm, and his real arm would actually be controlling Figment in the puppet. And this would technically be like a massive magic trick, especially for both adults and kids alike. I mean, if I saw that, I'd be like, that's mind-blowing. Because not only is it a futuristic kind of talent that these people were putting into creations, especially at Walt Disney Imagineering, but, I mean, it basically showed that Figment was actually coming to life. Because he wasn't exactly being controlled. No. I mean, if you were smart enough, then maybe you would understand that maybe Figment was actually being controlled by, the entertainer, which is basically whoever was playing, the Dreamfinder, which usually would be Ron Schneider or Steve Taylor. And, of course, when Dreamfinder were doing their meet and greets, I mean, it was such a huge deal. And, this is how people really knew about Figment and really loved the character, because not only is this a character that was from their childhood, but of course, even without Dreamfinder, I mean, you still have Figment, but even though it's not exactly the same anymore, Figment is, still part of people's childhood, which is why you probably see why there's a lot of people out there who screamed when Figment came out back at EPCOT for his reappearance in the early 2020s. Now let's quickly talk about the original attraction by itself. The original attraction was a Omni-Mover attraction that was created and designed by Tony Baxter and Steve Kirk themselves. Now, the original attraction was, I will say again, it was one of the most legendary attractions of all time, and of course one of the most popular attractions of all time. And the idea of the original Journey into Imagination was not only to show and introduce Dreamfinder and Figment, but it would also show what people can do with the power of the imagination. The imagination that comes from their head, their imagination that comes from their brain, and all that kind of stuff. And this was basically one of the amazing things of the original Journey into Imagination. And it was really amazing ride, and I would have loved that ride if I was there myself. I would have been adored with the original attraction. Now, although the original Journey into Imagination attraction closed, it sadly got replaced by, how do I say this? One of the worst attractions and one of the worst revamps of all time that would be called Journey into Your Imagination. Now, the original Journey into Imagination didn't close until 1998, with the secondary version of the ride opening in 1999 and closing just a year later. Because of how much of a massive letdown the original, not the original, but the secondary version of the ride was, it's just a massive total blow. And the thing was that questioned many people was that Dreamfinder was missing. Where the heck did Dreamfinder go? Good question. He got removed. That's really it. Dreamfinder got removed, and same thing, and mostly for Figment. And as you would expect, this would really anger a lot of people. And this is where many of the complaints came in, and that's why Michael Eisner was like, alright, you know what? I'm done. No more. We'll close down the ride. We're gonna revamp it. And now it is to what it is today, which is called Journey into Imagination with Figment. And they really did slap on Figment this time, especially for, you know, such a interesting revamp of the ride. I mean, okay, I get it. It's not as better compared to the original Journey into Imagination, but it is better than the secondary version of Journey into Imagination, which is basically Journey into Your Imagination. And in which, you know, it's a mid-ride, it's not perfect, and I mean, when I go visit EPCOT, I'm not gonna say anything about it. I promise I won't. But even then, it's not the best. You know, I really wish that we had the original Journey to Imagination return, and I know that many people have been begging for it ever since it got taken down and, you know, got replaced by a massive bogus Journey into Your Imagination. And we're still waiting for that kind of news. When will it happen? I don't know. I really wish I would know. Now, I know we really jumped ahead in time, but let's go back for a second from 1985 to 1987. This was when Figment had his own appearance of TV shows. Well, not exactly TV shows. They were actually EPCOT educational films that were provided by the Walt Disney Company that schools themselves can buy or rent for just a short amount of time. And of course, you know, these tapes were very expensive, as you would expect, because, I mean, they were limited, and, you know, they only had so many of these available. So they couldn't exactly provide them to every single school from around the globe and just call it a day. No, 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 no. They basically had to wait until these tapes were actually available to be rented out at Walt Disney. And, you know, as I will say again, only schools were able to get these. Nobody else. And that's what kind of seemed like a major letdown, especially for those who actually wanted to see a Figment TV show or a Figment EPCOT educational film, whatever it is. However, the good thing is that you actually can watch the original EPCOT educational films featuring Figment on YouTube, because someone was actually really nice enough to upload them onto YouTube, and now you can watch it on there. And in which I will provide a link for you guys in the description below. But Figment did have his own show. It wasn't very much. However, I think in my own mind, it was probably one of the most genuine and most creative things ever. Now, sure, of course, you know, Figment didn't have very much appearance because, you know, it costed a lot of money just to get animated Figment in every scene. I mean, sure, they did have a live cast of, you know, technically young kids who were there to experience, you know, what it was like to be in the Dreamport or in Figonia, basically Figment's home. And, you know, these were some really amazing and outstanding performances, of course, not only by the actors themselves, but, of course, by, you know, by this team who were behind, you know, creating such a lovely film. And it kind of makes me wish that Disney would allow these to be uploaded to Disney Plus instead of hiding them, but at least we got YouTube. Thank goodness for YouTube. Now, although speaking of TV shows, we have gotten an announcement announced by Bob Iger that he's going to be working with the Walt Disney staff team in making a Figment TV show, and in which I am very, very excited for. But I am still waiting for an announcement of a Figment movie because we actually haven't really gotten very much word about where it's at, and it kind of makes me think in my own head that maybe it's going away and it's not actually going to happen, and in which it would be a major, major bummer. Now, let's not forget, too, that Figment also had a comic book series, and in which they only had 2 of these versions. They had the very second one, and then they had the very first one. And in which, you know, these were also very popular at the time, especially since these were released in 2014. And, of course, these gained massive, massive success, and in which these comic books would basically be based off the original Journey to Imagination attraction, and also a very hidden secret of the development of EPCOT, or they would see it as Spaceship Earth. And in which, you know, of course, those were some very, very popular comic books, and, you know, Figment also got a later book that also debuted in early 2022, 2023, whichever those dates were. And, of course, you know, that also was based off the original Journey into Imagination attraction. And, you know, these were amazing books for kids and adults alike to read. And, you know, Figment still becomes one of the major and biggest and most best characters of all time for Disney. So how is Figment holding up to today's times? Now, as you all know, as I told you before, Figment is now getting his own TV show, and we're still waiting for an announcement of, you know, a Figment movie. He has a lot of merchandise still coming out, and there's plenty more still going out there. And, of course, as you would expect on the eBay side, resellers are definitely going at it with Figment, because they all know that Figment is a massive character, and in which, disclaimer, I freaking hate resellers. They suck, okay? And it's not cool to be gaining off profit off of original Disney merchandise and thinking that it's right for you to just resell it. So, done with that though, end of talk. But, going back to what I said, Figment is still one of the biggest characters of all time for the Walt Disney Company, and Bob Iger, the current CEO of Walt Disney, absolutely knows the fact that Figment is a massive character. Heck, even the CEO of Pixar also loves Figment. That's probably the reason why, and one of the explainings as to why he has appearances in Pixar films such as Inside Out and Toy Story. Which is absolutely absurd, because now we know that the Pixar CEO loves Figment, and in which I completely understand, because even if I was CEO of Pixar or Disney, I would definitely put Figment somewhere in every Disney film just to let people know, hey, I love Figment, and I would just love to put him out there no matter where he goes. I'll put him inside of a house, I'll put him on top of a desk, I'll put him on a sticker for a computer, I'll do whatever. I'll put Figment somewhere. But, you know, going back to what I was saying, Figment is definitely still one of the biggest characters of all time. He's been my favorite character for 4 years, and I'm still in love with the character. And, you know, he's basically one of the reasons why I became a furry in the first place and why I chose my persona to be a dragon. Yikes. But we're not going to be talking about that because that's not exactly what this video is about. But technically, you guys now know who Figment is, and, you know, technically somewhat of his history. Now, of course, there are better history videos about Figment out there, including Disney Dance, which I'll be linking below, and you can always check that out for yourself if you want to after you're done watching this video. But that's basically about it. That's basically who Figment is, and you all know who he now is. So, once again, please don't mispronounce him for being a different character like Spyro or Barney or Dragon Tales. He's not from anywhere of those. He's from EPCOT, he's from EPCOT Center, he's from Journey into Imagination, he's from an attraction, he's from a EPCOT educational film, he's gonna be from a future, sooner or later, TV show, he's gonna be from a somewhat canceled, probably never gonna happen, Figment movie. He's from there. He's not from Insomniac Games, he's not from Universal, he's not from DreamWorks, he's not from PBS Kids or anything like that. Figment is basically his own character, but he's also from the Walt Disney Company. So, If you notice that someone is still calling him Spyro, call him out, please. But don't be rude about it. Anyways, you guys, my name is Spark of Imagination. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Don't forget to keep sparking with your imagination. And don't forget to subscribe and like, because we're actually almost to 500 subscribers. So, hopefully you guys find this video useful. I'll see you guys soon. And, yeah, that's about it.